Hello and welcome back to my channel. So today you will be learning a lesson named An Astrologer's Day. So let's begin. Punctually at midday, he opened his bag and spread out his professional equipment, which consisted of a dozen cowrie shells, a square piece of cloth with obscure mystic charts on it, a notebook, and a bundle of Palmyra writing. His forehead was resplendent with sacred ash and vermilion, and his eyes sparkled with a sharp, abnormal gleam, which was really an outcome of a continual searching look for customers, but which his simple clients took to be a prophetic light and felt comforted. The power of his eyes was considerably enhanced by his position, placed as they were between the painted forehead and the dark whiskers which streamed down his cheeks. Even a half-wit's eye would sparkle in such a setting. To crown the effect, he wound a saffron-colored turban around his head. This color scheme never failed. People were attracted to him as bees are attracted to cosmos or dahlia stalks. He sat under the boughs of a spreading tamarind tree which flanked a path running through the town hall park. It was a remarkable place in many ways. A surging crowd was always moving up and down this narrow road morning till night. A variety of trades and occupations was represented all along its way: medicine sellers, sellers of stolen hardware and junk, magicians, and above all, an auctioneer of cheap cloth, who created enough din all day to attract the whole town. So the scene begins from midday, that is afternoon. A person, he opens his bag and he removes all his professional equipments. Those are a dozen of cowrie shells. Now what are cowrie shells? These are the shells that are representing the goddess protection, which is highly powerful and is connected with the strength and power of the ocean. People believe that. So he removes that, a piece of cloth which has some mystic charts on it, and a notebook, and also a bundle of Palmyra writing. So Palmyra writings are nothing but palm leaves were used as writing materials in Indian subcontinent and in the Southeast Asia. It was during 5th century BC, and he applied sacred ash and vermilion on his forehead. Vermilion is nothing but a bright red pigment made from mercury sulfide. In Hindi you can say it as sindoor. And he started searching for customers. He started looking here and there so that the customers come towards him. So he was an astrologer. Now with all this, there was a shining effect in his eyes, or there was a gleam in his eyes. And to crown that entire effect, he had worn a saffron colored turban around his head. So this color scheme never failed. People used to get attracted to him, just like how bees get attracted to the dahlia stalks, dahlia the flower. So he sat under a tamarind tree and he was waiting for people to come towards him. Now the place where he sat was a very wonderful place. It had a huge crowd which was always moving up and down towards that road till night, from morning till night. And there are also a variety of trades and occupations going on around him, that is medicine sellers, stolen hardware and junk sellers, magicians. So it was like a market, and he was over there, that place. Next to him, in vociferousness, came a vendor of fried groundnut who gave his ware a fancy name each day, calling it Bombay ice cream one day, and on the next Delhi almond, and on the third Raja's delicacy, and so on and so forth, and people flocked to him. A considerable portion of this crowd dallied before the astrologer too. The astrologer transacted his business by the light of a flare which crackled and smoked up above the groundnut heap nearby. Half the enchantment of the place was due to the fact that it did not have the benefit of municipal lighting. The place was lit up by shop lights. One or two had hissing gas lights, some had naked flares stuck on poles, Some were lit up by old cycle lamps, and one or two, like the astrologers, managed without lights of their own. It was a bewildering crisscross of light rays and moving shadows. This suited the astrologer very well, for the simple reason that he had not in the least intended to be an astrologer when he began life, and he knew no more of what was going to happen to others than he knew what was going to happen to himself next minute. He was as much a stranger to the stars as were his innocent customers, yet he said things which pleased and astonished everyone. That was more a matter of study, practice, and shrewd guesswork. All the same, it was as much an honest man's labor as any other, and he deserved the wages he carried home at the end of the day. Next to him was a person who was selling fried groundnuts, and he was vociferous. That means he had a very loud voice, or he was very outspoken. So he would call out to his customers every day with one new name, fancy name of the fried groundnuts. He would call one day it as Bombay ice cream, the next day as Delhi almond, or the third day as Raja's delicacy, so that people come towards him. It was a way of attraction, and there was lots of customers to the astrologer too. Now this astrologer where he was sitting, he did not have his own light. It was not a shop or something. He was sitting under a tamarind tree, so he didn't have a light of his own. So it was a marketplace. It was all surrounded by different shops. Some of the shops, they had gas lights, or some had just some flares stuck on a pole, a lamp, or some used cycle lamps. Some managed without the lights of their own, and astrologer was one of it. So he had a little bit of crisscross of light rays from every side. So that also gave a very wonderful effect to the astrologer. So people got attracted because of the lightings too. And this person, or this astrologer, he did not intend, or he did not have an interest of being an astrologer. He just came into this, and he was such an astrologer who didn't know what was going to happen to others. He didn't know what was going to happen to himself also. He was just a stranger to the stars, to the astrology, just like the customers. He was just doing his business, but he used to say lot of things that the people or the customers would get attracted, and they would be very happy and astonished also, because it was more a matter of study, practice, and guesswork. He was working hard for it, so he deserved the wages or the salary that you would get from the customers. So he would carry that to his home at the end of the day, and he deserved it. He had left his village without any previous thought or plan. If he had continued there, he would have carried on the work of his forefathers, namely, tilling the land, living, marrying, and ripening his cornfield and ancestral home. But that was not to be. He had to leave home without telling anyone, and he could not rest till he left it behind a couple of 100 miles. To a villager, it is a great deal, as if an ocean flowed between. Now this person had left his village without any previous thought or plan. He had not planned anything. He had to leave his village due to some reason, and if he had been in his village now, he would have carried on the work that his forefathers used to do. He would be tilling the land, living over there with his family. He would marry, have children, and have his ancestral home. But that was not to be. It was not his future. He had to leave it without telling anyone, and he had to leave it couple of 100 miles away. He had to go very far from it. So as a villager, it was a very big deal for him, because leaving his own town was very difficult for him, but he had to do it. He had a working analysis of mankind's troubles, marriage, money, and the tangles of humanity. Long practice had sharpened his perception. Within 5 minutes he understood what was wrong. He charged 3 paise per question, never opened his mouth till the other had spoken for at least 10 minutes, which provided him enough stuff for a dozen answers and advices. When he told the person before him, gazing at his palm, in many ways you are not getting the result of your efforts, 9 out of 10 were disposed to agree with him. Or he questioned, is there any woman in your family, maybe even a distant relative, who is not well disposed towards you? Or
he gave an analysis of character. Most of your troubles are due to your nature and a rough exterior. This endeared him to their hearts immediately, for even the mildest of us loves to think that he has a forbidding exterior.
Now he started being an astrologer here in this new place. He had his troubles, marriage, money, humanity, and after long practice he got it. Now within 5 minutes he understood what was wrong when a customer would come to him. So if a customer would ask him one question, he would charge 3 paise, and he would not speak till the other person or the customer speaks for at least 10 minutes, so that it will be easy for the astrologer to understand, to get enough information from this customer, so that it would be easy for him to give answers or advices. And most of the time he would give the answers that are common. In many ways you're not getting the results of your efforts, and 9 out of 10 would agree to him. They would believe him. Or he would say like, is there any woman in your family or in your relative who is not well disposed towards you, who is not good to you? Or he would give something about their character, saying that most of your troubles are because of your attitude or your behavior. No, it was easy for him to fool around, because all these things are very common, which every person believes in it. So he would get to that person easily.
The nuts vendor blew out his flare and rose to go home. This was a signal for the astrologer to bundle up too, since it left him in darkness except for a little shaft of green light which strayed in from somewhere and touched the ground before him. He picked up his cowrie shells and paraphernalia and was putting them back into his bag when the green shaft of light blotted out. He looked up and saw a man standing before him. He sensed a possible client and said, "You look so careworn. It will do you good to sit down for a while and chat with me." The other grumbled some reply vaguely. The astrologer pressed his invitation, whereupon the other thrust his palm under his nose, saying, "You call yourself an astrologer?" The astrologer felt challenged and said, tilting the other's palm towards the green shaft of light, "Yours is a nature." "Oh, stop that," the other said. "Tell me something worthwhile." Now the groundnut fellow who was next to him, he took out his flame and he rose to go home. So it was dark. So it was a signal for the astrologer also, because he didn't have a light of his own and he would share that same light. So now it was dark. So it was for him to bundle up and leave towards his home. Now near his shop, or near the astrologer where he was sitting, it was not completely dark there. A green light, a little green light from somewhere was reaching the ground. Now he picked up his cowrie shells and he started packing up his bag when that green light got blocked, and he looked up and there was a man standing before him. So he thought, this is like a possible client for me, a customer, so I should take this person. So he said, "You look very worried, so it's better you sit down, I'll help you out." Now the other person who was blocking the light, he stood there and he grumbled something. So the astrologer again said, "Sit, let's talk." This person put his palm under the astrologer's nose. He asked, "You say yourself as an astrologer, right?" So the astrologer was challenged. He felt challenged. Looking at his palm, he said, "Yours is a nature." So the other person immediately blocks him and he says, "Oh, stop that. Tell me something worthwhile, not something that I know already." Our friend felt picked. "I charge only 3 paise per question, and what you get ought to be good enough for your money." At this, the other withdrew his arm, took out an anna and flung it out to him, saying, "I have some questions to ask. If I prove you are bluffing, you must return that anna to me with interest. If you find my answers satisfactory, will you give me 5 rupees? No. Or will you give me 8 annas? Now the astrologer was a little worried, so he says, "I will cost 3 paise per question, whatever you ask, and you have to give me the money." So the other person, so he withdrew his arm and he took out a anna. Anna is nothing but a currency unit formerly used in British India, equal to 1/16 of a rupee. So he removes this one anna and he throws towards the astrologer and he says, "I have some questions to ask. If I prove you are bluffing, if you're lying, you must return that money to me with interest." So the astrologer says, "If you find my answers satisfactory,
will you give me 5 rupees? So the person says no. So astrologer again says, or will you give me 8 annas? Alright, provided you give me twice as much if you are wrong, said the stranger. This pact was accepted after a little further argument. The astrologer sent up a prayer to heaven as the other lit a cheroot. The astrologer caught a glimpse of his face by the matchlight. There was a pause as cars hooted on the road. Jatka drivers swore at their horses, and the babble of the crowd agitated the semi-darkness of the park. The other sat down, sucking his cheroot, puffing out, and sat there ruthlessly. The astrologer felt very uncomfortable. Here, take your Anna back. I am not used to such challenges. It is late for me today. He made preparations to bundle up. The other held his wrist and said, You can't get out of it now. You dragged me in while I was passing. The astrologer shivered in his grip and his voice shook and became faint. Leave me today. I will speak to you tomorrow. The other thrust his palm in his face and said, Challenge is challenge. Go on. The astrologer proceeded with his throat drying up. There is a woman. So now the astrologer agreed for 8 annas. He said, Alright, if you prove me wrong, I'll give you the double. I'll give you twice. So this pact was accepted after a little further argument. And then finally the astrologer, he started praying, and the other person, he sat down, lighting a cheroot. What is a cheroot? It is nothing but a cigar with both ends open. And when he lit this cheroot, the astrologer caught a glimpse of the person's face. He saw him, and there was a pause. For him, it was as if the entire world had stopped. Everything was in a pause, and the astrologer started feeling very uncomfortable, and he gives him back his money and he says, I am not used to such challenges and it is late for me today. He started packing up his bag. So the other person, he stops and he says, You can't get away now. You dragged me in this. So now it is a challenge. You have to accept it. Now the astrologer started shivering and he says, but again, this person, he says that challenge is a challenge. You cannot go now. The astrologer, he took the hand of, or the palm of the person, and he started saying, There is a woman. Stop, said the other. I don't want all that. Shall I succeed in my present search or not? Answer this and go. Otherwise, I will not let you go till you disgorge all your coins. The astrologer muttered a few incantations and replied, All right, I will speak, but will you give me a rupee if what I say is convincing? Otherwise, I will not open my mouth and you may do what you like. After a good deal of haggling, the other agreed. The astrologer said, You were left for dead. Am I right? So that person says, Stop. I don't want all that. You have to just answer saying that whether I will succeed in my present search or not. Answer this and you will go. And I will not let you go till you give me all your money. He was sure that this person is bluffing. So the astrologer, he started acting and he started saying a few incantations, prayers. And then he replied, All right, I will speak. But will you give me a rupee if what I say is convincing? Otherwise, I will not open my mouth. You have to pay me. So again, after a little bit of argument, they agreed and the astrologer said, You were left for dead. Am I right? Ah, tell me more. A knife has passed through you once, said the astrologer. Good fellow. He bared his chest to show the scar. What else? And then you were pushed into a well nearby in the field. You were left for dead. So the person was interested and he tells, Oh, tell me more. So the astrologer says, A knife has passed through you once. This man, he was shocked and he says, Good fellow. He undressed himself, his chest, and he showed that scar. And he was like, What else? He was excited now. And the astrologer continues and he tells, Then you were pushed into a well nearby in the field. You were left for dead. That is, somebody had left you for dying there. I do hope you have understood this lesson till now. The next part will be continued in the next video. Until then, keep watching and do like and do subscribe to my channel. Thank you and stay safe.